So hello, everybody, and welcome to the 5th anniversary of the Kata School Cascadia Friday Zooms in October 2019, following the Kata Coaching Dojo World Tour with Thilo Schwartz. We decided it might be a great idea to get people back together to see what they were doing a week or two after that. And we have met almost every single Friday since that day. We didn't meet a couple times when we were all at CataCon in person together. So for today, I'll be your host. My name is Tracy Defoe, and I frequently host the Friday chats. Kata School Cascadia is one of the worldwide Kata schools. Like I said, we meet every Friday. We host these Zooms. We also have a once a year in-person event. And we have two calls every week, one for a general talk about the Starter Kata. The second one we call the Coach's Call, and it's really where coaches come to speak to their peers and ask questions. I wanted to start by recognizing and thanking three of our most faithful volunteers and coaches. And that is, of course, Jennifer Ayers, Gemma Jones, and Tucker Cass. None of those guys could join us today, but they all sent their good wishes. And I wanted to just mention that we are a 100% volunteer organization. So it is my pleasure to introduce the first of our speakers, Dominic Stokes. Dominic is new to Kata and new to Kata School Cascadia. We first met him in July when he came to our in-person Kata Together event. Dominic made a big impression, not only because he taught salsa to all of us, but because of his optimism and enthusiasm as a learner.
Okay, thank you. So this all started whenever we were in one of our calls, and I was asking a question about everybody's experience when they did their first kata. And Tracy was nice enough to say, somebody needs to volunteer to be Dom's first coach. And Sally graciously said that she would be my first coach. And that led to me creating my first challenge statement. So I'm going to read that here just so everybody else can kind of see what I was working on. I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if by September 23rd, I can do a one-armed push-up on video to be more physically fit, enjoy push-ups again, and feel stronger than ever? Sadly, I did not put the video on this mural board. I don't know everybody here yet, but I am willing to share it later. There's a lot of like bones cracking and my dog's in the video too, but I'm not ashamed to show it. Two things that I want to call out before this, just so that everybody here gets to know me. I'm not some muscly person. I don't always work out in the gym. I don't have a gym routine, but I did say that whenever I was in high school, I really enjoyed doing push-ups, but I had a shoulder injury whenever I played football. So it took the joy away from performing them. So I wanted Kata to bring back that joy of being excited to be in the process. So Sally was my first coach, and I was very gracious for that. As I built relationships with my new coach, I found out that there were some things that were firsts. Obviously, it was my first experience doing kata and working with a new coach, but I was the first male that Sally had coached. So those were the two differences. But one thing that we shared in common was we both had a lot of experience with the challenge. Sally is very well versed in doing push-ups and like physical fitness, and she was able to call me out on things that I may have been a little bit false about, or I wasn't able to lie with her, basically. And I think that that was really important for me, that my first coach had physical experience with the challenge that I was trying to work on. So at this point, I knew my coach and I knew that she knew what I was talking about. So that made me very happy. Next, I had to unlearn all of my industrial engineering instincts. My perception in the beginning was that it was my first target condition was just way too closely mirrored off of my challenge. I really thought that I had to complete one arm push ups within my first target condition. I didn't keep record of it because Sally and I agreed that we should change that after I failed for 3 days in a row. But something else that I want to call out is I was focused a lot on output rather than the actual story. And I didn't recognize that making the correct block diagram would have worked, or setting the right targets whenever I was trying to come up with my current conditions would have worked. So what I'm pointing out here is this is what my first block diagram looked like. And I blew up some of the words. The point is that there were arrows. I had a decision diamond in here with yes and no, and it didn't look the way that Mark taught me in the beginning because I was still kind of working off of those industrial engineering concepts. I was also very optimistic. I am optimistic as a person, but if you can see from one of my first process metrics, I thought that I could do a plank for 10 minutes. I didn't get anywhere close to that. So those were very humbling experiences that I went through in the beginning when I had to get out of that industrial engineering mindset that comes from being in production all the time where you automatically try to reduce something by 50% or you try to hit this huge lofty goal and kind of shoot for the stars. I needed to learn how to make small incremental improvements. And Sally was very nice in taking her time to do that. Next, I wanted to call out that I really had to listen to my body, which I'm summarizing as look at the data. Um, in the beginning, and I can see this in one of my process metrics, I was obviously tired because the one thing that I was trying to track was my recovery time. And you can tell by the values that I had gotten in the beginning that my recovery time was showing that there was something wrong in the process. I wasn't able to build strength. My goal was to recover before doing another set of push ups in 60 seconds, or my total recovery time throughout doing my push ups was supposed to take 60 seconds. And in the beginning, it was maybe you could say that there was a small trend line coming down here, but I physically felt the issues. Anytime that there's a number down here, it's a day that I skimmed, probably because I was sore from pushing myself too much up here. But after I listened to my body and I understood what recovery time was telling me, I was able to decrease the number of push ups that I was doing in one set and focused on adding smaller bursts of recovery time throughout the process rather than doing a lot of push ups and trying to recover in a short amount of time. And you can see that once I changed that, I was able to get a dramatic decrease. And it wasn't that I just had built up strength in the matter of a week. It was because I physically changed the process by looking at the data. And that was a huge aha moment for me. The reason that I added these sticky notes down here is because this decrease in the trend line correlates with whenever I came up with an obstacle that I think really made sense. And this is the next thing that I kind of wanted to talk about. I got better at writing down what the obstacles were through rigorous work with my coach, and we were able to recognize that I call it a sweet spot in my obstacle identification. I was able to understand that at certain points, if I were to just make smaller chunks of rest time within the times that I did push ups, I was able to actually do more push ups in the least amount of rest time. Once I found that out, that's why I put this box up here for sprint. I felt like all of the obstacles were out of the way. I knew how to build strength and I knew that I could reach my goal. So now the real goal or accomplishing the challenge was to discover how to build strength. And I could tailor the fact that I knew how to build strength to doing specific push ups that would help develop muscles to be able to do a one armed push up. That's where this first kata ended. I was able to hit the target condition by the date. I have video proof of that, but I still wanted to do more. And this is the second part about how I extended my learning. So there's two things that I really wanted to try to get out of this that I enjoyed before starting my next kata series. I wanted to practice experimenting, and I also wanted to practice identifying obstacles. To practice experimenting, I have a notes app on my phone where in the morning I have three separate pages, but I just pick one thing to do a day. And one of the pages is expectations, the next one is what happened, and the next one is what did you learn. And my goal right now is to have an idea of something that I think about the day before. And in the morning, I write down what I expect would happen. And then halfway through the day, I say what happened. And then at the end of the day, I say what I learned. I want this process of practicing like the reflections to help me be more cognizant as I think about experiments that I do whenever I start my next kata cycle. The next part is practicing to identify obstacles. And if anybody came to the call last week, I'd ask the question if there was a way to kind of glean kata from watching TV shows. So my goal right now is to continue working with the whole group to identify ways to observe obstacles that happen from watching your favorite TV shows. Great British Bake Off, Bar Rescue, Wife Swap, all the TV shows that we used to watch in the past that are organized as a challenge. And then there's somebody that works on that challenge and ends up either accomplishing or failing at a goal. I want to see if I can utilize those everyday tasks to identify obstacles and get better at writing those because that's the thing that really helped me sprint in my experience with my first kata.
Thank you, Dominic. That's great. I particularly last week when we talked about could we structure a storyboard based on an episode of Bar Rescue? I thought that was really cool, and maybe will give us something to talk about. It's been really fun for us in Kata School Cascadia to have a new learner who's so willing every week to tell us what's happening, and also to ask like really great first timer questions. So Dominic has featured a lot lately in our Starter Kata call, and I really appreciate how much you're willing to share it. I think it's great that we were able to start our 5th anniversary Zoom with somebody who is really brand new and still in his beginning stages. So with that, I am going to ask Roderick Langer, also pretty new to Kata School, Roderick, to take over.
So I started my kata journey a couple of years ago, and I like to think of it sort of like mountain climbing, where I'm going from base camp 1 to base camp 2, with each base camp being my new target condition until I reach my challenge or my summit. And so I put this image together when explaining the concepts of kata to folks where I work, and I started my original current condition by reading Mike Rother's Toyota Kata book, and then at the request of my executive director and facilitating a book club, and then we did some improvement katas. None of us coaches, none of us had any experience, and you can imagine how that went. But it was the way we had at the time to learn and to get going. And so after attending KataCon, I started coming to this meeting and the weekly kata calls, and then finding new resources like Kata Together, certainly the things that Gemma put up, all of her boards and her design capabilities, which I am just in love with, and I stole from mercilessly. So I'll just be honest about that. Um, and then leading other book clubs and supervisor training groups. And my expectation was to grow Kata at our organization and get other coaches going and all of that eventually. So I started, maybe not the best way, but with thinking, I need some tools that people can grab onto and resources and all of that. And so we're pretty much a virtual organization in IT. So I took our storyboard and then borrowed heavily from Gemma to create something in Mural, where all the people that I coach are all over the country. And so we use virtual storyboards because it's the only way we can do it. We created a resources mural that, again, I borrowed heavily from Gemma. And just it's all videos and books and things for people to go to for resources. And then a SharePoint page, everybody could get their stuff at. And I have videos and articles and things like that there as well. So that was great. Meanwhile, we did a whole bunch of improvement katas, and some of these were better than others. All of them more or less successful, but some larger than others. And the problem that I have with the way we do business is we go along and we do business as usual until things don't go very well. And then somebody's like, oh, we got to put a tiger team together, or we need to do some sort of change, and that improves things for a little while, and that's great. But then, of course, once that's passed, we go back to business as usual, and we continue that process over and over again without really ever thinking about continuous improvement or how we build on our successes. And of course, what I really want to do is take that and turn it on its side and not wait to the point that something's broken before we decide we want to improve it. And taking our current condition and using PDCA, using Toyota Kata, and going from level to level until we really become the learning organization that I have in my mind as what I would like to see us be. So at this meeting, every week, I started keeping a little file that I call Markisms, because I would hear something, generally it was Mark that would say, although not always, that I was like, oh my God, that's golden, I got to write that down. And that sometimes became articles for me, or just, I would use it in my own practice. But I love the little vignettes that I would get, and I'd write them all down. And so here's just a few of them that I've collected over time. So What I really want to be is at least be the person that plants the seeds and get something started. And hopefully eventually, an actual mature Toyota Kata program. So in the dojo right now that I'm in that class with Tilo and Tracy and all, I've been uh, really excited to see that there's other people um, in different meetings in the dojo and whatnot. And now I'm reaching out to all of them because I haven't seen one outside of myself that knows anything about Toyota Kata until I've now just been recently hearing about that. So super exciting. But I'll keep doing this probably for the rest of my life in one way or another. And I'm really grateful for this group and Kata Cascadia. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Roderick. I forgot to do this for Dominic, but I think we could do like a Zoom applause. Yay. Roderick, I know people may not know you from LinkedIn, but if they don't, they might want to follow you because you blog frequently and write a little bit about your Kata journey all the time, which is why I thought you might be up for a presentation. So feel free to write something on the mural board there if you have some feedback or thoughts, or if you sparked a question. Roderick, what is your fave Marxism right now?
Actually, the latest one, Tracy, was from you. Um,
I'm
and
happy to be a Marxism. That's an honor.
yeah, um, and that one was where you were talking about a summary reflection can just be a coaching cycle that we spend time focusing on reflections together, which I hadn't thought of before, but makes sense.
Yeah, when we gave everybody the Starter Kata, the worksheet basically to prepare for summary reflection, it became the conversation that is afterwards. And before that, we used to just have a whole coaching cycle where we look back at the coaching record, we look back at the learnings, and did a little bit of a summary reflection together, which I think still works lots for lots of people.
Yeah,
I'm going to move us on because I'm supposed to keep us on time. And the next part of the storyboard you'll see actually just says Maria and Tracy. Mark Rosenthal and I thought a good theme for today might be then and now, like how were things 5 years ago and how are they now? So I'm happy to invite Maria Grzanka. Maria Grzanka is a Kata coach, a Kata girl geek, and somebody that I've worked closely with here at Kata School Cascadia. She's one of our principals. And also, of course, I've had the opportunity to coach and second coach Maria, but I'm just thinking you've never coached me. So let's do that next. Okay.
Okay. That
Okay.
would be fun.
That would be fun. So Maria, tell us, how did
Mm.
you start your Kata learning journey and what did you expect at the time?
Okay. So, from 2012 to 2016, and I guess I should start with long time continuous improvement. I've been doing that in my career for many years. 2012 to 16, my title was lean project manager at a LTL freight company. So I covered a pretty large territory. And what we were trying, one of the, I don't know, phrases that people were using was we needed leaders to be coaches, coaching their teams towards improvement. And by kind of chance and coincidence, one of my sites was an IT group in Portland, Oregon. And I don't know how many of you know how much of the Toyota practice guide comes from people in Portland, Oregon. So Northwest HPEC, being one of those groups, was hosting Jeff Liker at a talk in this building that I happened to be passing through. So I'm passing through, I'm thinking, this guy's talking here, I must go to this thing. And that talk, I think, was about leadership, but he also presented Mike's work in this thing. So this is the first time I've heard of it. I think it was maybe 2015. And at that time, I was thinking, okay, great. You want us to be coaches. I have no idea how to coach. But at this talk, I got what I thought were instructions. And those 5 questions I took back to work as the instructions for coaching. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to go ask these questions. And so I had them on a little piece of paper on my little clipboard. And I went out at my next one-on-one with my director and I said, hey, what's our target condition? And he was like, huh? And so I don't remember exactly what he said, but I do remember writing down he did not understand the question. Ask a different question. And so for me, that's like where it started was I was kind of, I guess, looking back, I was experimenting with the questions and trying to get the conversation about what we were trying to improve happen in our regular conversation so that it wasn't like a foreign thing for me to come by and start talking about improvement.
Okay, and how's it been going since then? So since that first introduction?
Okay, so since that first introduction, well, that worked wildly well. Once I could figure out how to navigate the questions better, and gear the conversation towards what they were actually trying to improve, it became less of me putting my templates on them. Like, here's an A3 template, here's the standard work instruction template, here are all those things. So we just started actually doing improvement. And we went from like the worst performing area to the best performing area in about a year. Since then, I've left that company. I now do independent consultant and instructor. And I started slowly adding the kata material to what I was already teaching people. And at some point, Jennifer, again from Northwest HPEC, says, you should go to KataCon, you might like it. And that's where I met Tracy. That's how I got invited to this group, as well as Kata Girl Geeks. We're in cohort 14 now.
Yeah.
In Kata Girl Geeks. So I'm usually coaching every day. I'm coaching some external clients as well as with the Kata Girl Geeks.
And maybe you'd like to say something about what's next or how you think your scientific thinking chops have evolved, something like that.
Well, what's next is I'm coming back to some of the lean principles, I think. So I'm trying to figure out how to weave these two things together as I'm working with clients, and I'm hoping that we can see this kind of scale out more in many different industries and just see it more widely used. I don't know how to do that, but I'm hoping with the help of all my friends here, we can figure something out.
Do you think that, so you used to be a lean person, like a lean resource for inside your company, I think, in the beginning. And how did that change for you when you became more of a coach, more of a Kata coach?
I'll sometimes describe it as pulling rather than pushing. So I feel like before I would go around pushing my templates on everyone. Here's the A3, here's how you do the Kaizen, we need to do this thing. And with the coaching questions, it's like I'm pulling the information from people to be like, hey, let's talk about this. What are we really trying to do here? So that's how I see those two areas kind of cross over for me.
Okay, that's cool. So does anybody have a question that they would like to ask Maria at this time?
I've got a comment, if I may. Maria, I wanted to thank you for that, what you shared. You know, we share what we did in the past, but almost the first thing you said, so, you know, how accurately to remember the past, I don't know. But you said, I have no idea how to coach. So you went into it already thinking scientifically. You went into it thinking, I don't know, I'm going to have to learn. And that's a totally different way than coming in and saying, I know how to do this, or I think I am a coach already. You went on to say, I don't know how to do that toward the end of your presentation. My impression is, don't kill me for this, folks, but my impression is women are more able to do this than men. And it is quite a positive characteristic for opening the door to all sorts of discovery. So while you were talking about the mechanics of what you did, I think the mindset you went into it with was equally as important. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
That's cool. I like it. Thank you, Mike. Mark has his hand up. Yes, thank you, Mark. Go.
So, Maria, if you were to give advice to somebody who's in the position you are in as an internal change agent who's trying to make that transition from pushing the templates to pulling information? What would you tell them?
What would I tell them? Well, there's a process there that I was observing, which was how people were responding to me. And this is the process I was trying to change, was as the internal improver, a lot of times I feel like when I arrive, you're going to run away from me. You don't really want to see me there. Because if I've showed up at your site, it means there's probably something going wrong. And that wasn't going to be useful in helping people to improve. So somehow I had to change the process where they wanted to talk to me. And I think by asking them a question that they could answer in their own words, rather than me giving something, that was changing the dynamics or the direction of the conversation.
Did you ever encounter just tell me what to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Just show me what to do. And then sometimes like you have to, I think, gauge whether there's a couple different meanings behind that. It's like, just tell me what to do so you'll go away. Or there's a just tell me what to do because I don't know what to do. In that case, let's go out to the floor and look at it together.
Great, that's really great. Thank you. Thanks, Mark, for joining in there. Actually, I just realized, but by having a dialogue as one of our presentations, you got a really good taste of what our Friday coaches are like, our coaches calls, right? Somebody brings up an issue, people ask questions, they pile on with their own experiences, and you go away feeling kind of validated and maybe a little bit wiser and certainly supported in community. You can always join our weekly Zooms. They're free. They happen every Friday and they're 30 minutes each. And there's 2 registration links. There's a link under each of those on the board. Also, we have a free Save Me a Spot registration for our in-person event in 2025. That just means you will get information. I'll probably survey you about what you want us to do, and you will get first chance to register. And we do have a resource mural of our own, which is down here. Also, just a link to that in case you're wondering, what kind of resources might be available. So that said, I am now going to invite Mark Rosenthal. Oh, and when Mark speaks, you guys, you should definitely pick up your pen in case there's a Markism. I'm going to invite Mark Rosenthal, Kata Coach, and what are we going to say? Community Sage, practicing coach, to offer his thoughts. And his topic today is about the future. So what is he seeing happen, and where's the Kata community going?
So this is one of those things that if I were, say, keynoting on day 2 of this, I would have rewritten everything just based on what I just heard, which is cool. Really early message in our community. And this is from 2014, from really the precursor to the practice guide that Mike graciously offered to the community. And, we are emphasizing things like practice the kata exactly, which is true. And I want to drill in a little bit on that because I think at least I saw and I was a little too rigid, because there's 2 points here when we say exactly, which is what kata you're practicing and how you're practicing it. And then the other question I have for people to just think about is, who are the starter kata actually for? So there's my first question. If you look at the baseline reference material, and it's organized great, then our baseline references are always address the starter kata as being for the learner or for the coach. And I'm beginning to think that, my own thinking is evolving toward all of the starter kata being for the coach, which would change the way I spun the whole thing a little bit if I go that way. So they give the coach a prepackaged reference standard to work from until the coach gains more experience. So I just kind of want to plant that out there because I think that might change our conversations a little bit. And I kind of see that going. I'm seeing a more subtle and more nuanced approach beginning to develop amongst a number of the practitioners out there. And the other thing I'm seeing is that coaches are starting to assess the starting conditions of their learners a little better, rather than just going in and saying, okay, we're going to start with this rigid approach and we have to go through this, and then we have to do this, and then we have to do this, but rather doing a better job of grasping the current condition, not only of the learner, but of the context that the learner is working in. And then looking to say, okay, what is a starter kata? What is a practice routine that I can ask this learner to try that would help them move from where they're currently practicing to the next level, rather than ripping it all out and saying you've got to rigidly follow this entire process. So each starter kata is an experiment. And I'm asking the learner as a coach to try a specific starter kata. And I want to know what I expect the learner to learn as a result of practicing that. And I want to ask myself, how can I test that outcome? So, hey, here's a thing called a block diagram. I'd like you to go map your process and just, I'll show them how to do it. Have them try it. But what do I expect them to be able to explain that today they cannot? And if there's a gap, then what else do I have to give them? Which brings me to, as a coach, how deep is your own personal well of possible starter kata that you could ask a learner to apply situationally? So there's cases where maybe the simple block diagram isn't going to cut it for us. What else do you have in your hip pocket that you can present? And the key here is, I think we're learning to not, I don't like the word confuse, but not to combine. I'm going to use that word. Asking the learner to practice precisely and combining that with limiting what I can ask them to practice. So I may well pull a different starter kata out of my hip pocket that I think is more appropriate for the situation. And I can still do this within the context of the coaching kata, and I can do it within the context of where I'm trying to go. But as Maria pointed out, if I'm working in a work cell that's producing widgets, I may have different starter kata that I'm going to ask them to use to grasp the current condition than if my learner is trying to figure out how to do one-arm push-ups. There's certainly combinations, but there's also differences. And as a coach, part of my growth is to learn to distinguish the difference and to grow my repertoire of starter kata that I can bring to bear. What got me to this was thinking back to a long time ago when I learned to ski. Or actually, no, it wasn't when I learned to ski. It's when I relearned to ski. And what the coach did, the instructor, was had us ski down the hill, and she watched us cut some turns. And then there were 5 of us, and each of us got a different thing to practice so that we could become better skiers as an individual, rather than all of us being asked to do the same thing. And what this instructor had in her head was, as she grasps our current condition, she's got her own repertoire of drills, what we would call starter kata, that she can assign to an individual learner and ask them to practice that in order to become a better skier. And now I'm starting to connect the dots, and I think the other people in our community is starting to become a little more flexible. And so that's kind of what I want to hang out there, where I think the future is going with this. And I'm really hoping this would inspire some good discussion.
We can Zoom applaud for Mark. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Roderick, too. I just put into the chat that I expect we'll pick this up next week, and everybody can have a whole week to think about it. We have just a couple minutes left, but if you have something to say, I would love to hear from you. Anybody you have, we have 2 minutes.
I think Mark's comments are great. This topic is still young. The Kata book came out in 2009. The practice guide came out in 2017. Those are all starting points. And to see it evolve and turn into more nuance and different directions. And the idea, what is the learner ready for, and what starter kata do I have in my pocket to give this learner now? That's really cool. That's a great development from, where we started. And I can imagine how that will bring new obstacles with it that we will have to work to overcome.
Mhm.
But the cool thing is we've learned to enjoy that process. I'm finding myself having trouble relating to people who don't enjoy that process. It's like, people say why things can't be done and so forth. It's like, oh my God, this is great. Look at these problems we have that we're going to work on. So Mark, I appreciate your comments, and I really appreciate the group's work. I think you're one of many groups out there. I'm still waiting for sort of, I don't know, this thing to get into more of a mainstream, but judging from history, that may have to happen in the next generation or something like that.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike, for that. I just was thinking as you said that, and Roderick mentioned he's currently in the Kata Coaching Dojo. Oh, I see you have your hand up. Okay, I'm going to say this first. One of the things we teach there is that there's different levels that the coach can be coaching at. One of them is the method level, like the method of the kata. Another one is the process level. And this one Mark is mentioning is more at the person level, like looking at that individual learner as an individual. Roderick, go ahead. I'm going to give you the last word.
I was just curious, Mark, about the point you made about how deep your well of possible starter kata can be that you apply situationally. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is, like, I would think in a way it's sort of like infinite if you're thinking about that, right? It's
Yeah.
whatever. Is that kind of what you were thinking, or were you thinking like you would have some things like written down to try?
So Roderick, yes, I think that well can be infinite, and I think that is your development as a coach.
Okay, well, I think with that, I'm going to officially close the meeting, and you are all welcome to go. However, I will be here for a few minutes if you want to stay on. Thanks, everybody who joined us, and we look forward to our 6th year, which starts next Friday at Kata School Cascadia.